Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. We are well into the NFL offseason, and the narrative around New England is it's been underwhelming. I just ask, what were you expecting? A 4-win team with high taxes that plays in cold weather with an unknown head coach and quarterback, and the loss of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the appeal that came with it. Were you expecting big name free agents to sign with the Patriots? This was all very predictable. But when you take a step back and you look at what the new de facto GM, Elliott Wolf, is trying to accomplish, what he's seen done with his father, Ron Wolf, in Green Bay, this has been a decent start to a rebuild. And again, nothing overwhelming, no big splashes, no big moves, but this is the time of year where players get to choose where they want to play, and the Patriots have to be at the bottom of that list of all 32 teams in the NFL. We knew that going in, and their only real ability to attract those players is by overpaying. And they tried, right? They tried to spend 22 plus million a year on Calvin Ridley, a guy who barely cracks the top 30 wide receivers in the NFL. And frankly, I'm glad that they didn't, and they're going to pursue other options at the wide receiver position. But let's go through some of these moves that the Patriots have made so far, because when you factor in the situation they are in a full-on rebuild, I think Elliott Wolf is actually doing a pretty good job. And that starts with the players they brought back. He identified key players on this team. I know they won 4 games last year, but there were a lot of foundational pieces of players you could not let leave. And that starts with Michael Onwenu, who I guess is now going to be the full-time right tackle. It took Belichick forever last season to kick him over to the far right side. And he played pretty well at the position and now looks to be the permanent guy there. They didn't spend as much as I actually thought it would take to bring Michael Onwenu back. I thought they would have to crack $20 million a year. They really didn't have to do that. So Michael Onwenu is back. They brought in Hunter Henry, a real leader in the locker room. He was considered the second best tight end on the market, second to Dalton Schultz, who immediately re-signed with the Houston Texans. So you got Hunter Henry back, a reliable tight end that's been there for 3 years, the guy who is the real leader of that offense. And then you brought back Kendrick Bourne. And we all know Kendrick Bourne's health issues this past season, coming off of a torn ACL. But Bourne, when he has been on the field, particularly his first season with the Patriots, and this last season in which he was having a career year up until he got injured against the Miami Dolphins, he is probably your number 2 or number 3 guy right now, and you're going to be able to depend on him, whoever is at the quarterback position. Kyle Duggar, who I thought would be gone, they transition tagged him. It looks like he will be back. The Patriots are prepared to match whatever offer Duggar could potentially receive, and as far as I know, he hasn't gotten anything, so he'll be back. And then you have Josh Uche, who I definitely thought was departing, who was willing to come back to the Patriots on a cheap, expanded role, prove-it type deal. They're only paying him like $3 million. And Uche, who is basically a third down player under Belichick, is likely going to be in the game a lot more, and he deserves an expanded role. He'll likely demand a much larger contract next season. I'm shocked Uche is back, and rumor has it there were other teams that were willing to fork up potentially 3 to 4 times that amount, and he decided to come back to the Patriots on a 1-year, very cheap contract. And look, I know the Patriots don't have the appeal by big name free agents outside of the building, but the players in the building wanted to come back. They wanted to play for Gerard Mayo. They like the direction they think the team is moving, and that is a good sign long term. If the Patriots this upcoming season can show like, hey, we're actually building something here, there's a little bit of excitement being generated in Foxborough. People now know who Gerard Mayo is outside of the building. They like him. Well, then suddenly you're going to have players in the 2025 NFL offseason that are going to want to come here. And that is a big sign because it really starts in the building. If the players that are there want to come back, well, then that reputation is going to expand if the Patriots play well enough and show that they're developing something there. Now, they also made some key acquisitions. These aren't, again, big splashes, big moves, but for the most part, all of these moves are upgrades. It starts with Jacoby Brissett, and none of us were very excited about Jacoby Brissett coming in. I was more like, let's give it to Flacco. I thought Flacco did a really great job last season, But Jacoby Brissett had played with Alex Van Pelt, the new offensive coordinator, before, and the last time he started while he was with Cleveland, he did a pretty good job, played very well most games, except for the one game, of course, he played the Patriots and threw an interception, I think, on the first play of the game. But Jacoby Brissett is an upgrade over what Mac Jones had become the last 2 seasons. He's going to be a lot more reliable. He's going to be able to take hits and bounce back. He's going to be able to run the West Coast style AVP offense. They're better at the quarterback position than they were with Mac Jones. And then the move that I really like, which I think is a bit underrated, KJ Osborne coming in from the Minnesota Vikings. He was a number 2, number 3 guy in Minnesota, especially after they got Jordan Addison. Still was able to generate somewhere between 500 and 600 yards over the last 3 seasons. And that's with Kirk Cousins targeting mainly Justin Jefferson. They relied on KJ Osborne to block on a lot of plays and really make way for Justin Jefferson and make way for Jordan Addison this past season. You talk to people out of Minnesota, and they will tell you this guy has the potential of being a number 1 X receiver. And that is an upgrade, at least over Devontae Parker or Juju Smith-Schuster, who I'm not sure is even going to be on the roster next season. KJ Osborne may be their best receiver right now. Again, that's not saying much because they don't have a lot of great receivers, but you pair him with Demario Douglas, with Kendrick Bourne, with Hunter Henry, suddenly, you got something to work with. Not the best receiving core in the NFL, but at least you have something to work with, and we haven't even gotten to the NFL draft yet. And then another addition at the tight end position is Austin Hooper, who really came into the league as an effective receiving tight end, but over the last few seasons has developed as a really strong blocking tight end, so he can play both roles. And when you factor in what Mike Gesicki did, who was really only a red zone guy and delivered here and there, but wasn't that reliable, and Pharaoh Brown, who I like, but was kind of underutilized in New England, more of a blocking tight end, he can play both roles there. So that's an upgrade. You can have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, and you can throw it to Hooper, or you can have him block. He's going to be able to do whatever you ask. Big upgrade there at the tight end position. Then we have Antonio Gibson, the new running back coming in out of Washington. This is really the first receiving heavy, blocking heavy, third down running back they've had since James White. And James White was much smaller, not much of a blocker, but he can do both. And Patriots really have been missing that since White's departure. Now, I'm not sure this is an upgrade over Ezekiel Elliott, but it is a more versatile option that they really haven't had at the running back position in quite some time. So I really like the Gibson move. That's also pretty underrated. And let's also not forget, Zeke is still on the market. Dallas re-signed Rico Dowdle. So that kind of closes the door on Ezekiel Elliott, who it seemed like really wanted to return to the Dallas Cowboys, seemed to enjoy his time in New England, was far more productive than any of us expected. I wouldn't be shocked if they at least consider re-signing Zeke, and Zeke reconsiders coming back to New England. Then you got a decent running back room with Ramondre Stevenson, Zeke, and a real third down back, Antonio Gibson. That would look pretty good. But even if it's just Gibson and Stevenson and a guy you pull in the 6th or 7th round in the draft, their strength is the running game, and that is really what Alex Van Pelt likes to do, is establish the running game and short throws with that West Coast offense so they can really benefit off of play action, off of bootlegs, and plays like that, which is really where the modern NFL is moving. And then the only real move that I think is a downgrade, and take that with an asterisk, is Chukwuma Okorafor. I say he's a downgrade because Trent Brown, when on the field, when he actually gives a damn, is one of the best left tackles in the NFL. But Trent Brown wasn't available much this season. He was injured, and then he was benched late in the year because of his attitude, seemed to be a cancer in the locker room. Not really a guy. I was considering bringing him back because they didn't make any big splashes on the left side of the offensive line, but Okorafor adds a lot more depth and a lot more competency when you compare him to a guy like Vidarian Lowe, who couldn't do a damn thing on the left side of the line. As of right now, he's probably your starting left tackle, but we'll see how the draft plays out. But if Trent Brown's out there, yeah, Okorafor is a massive downgrade, but when Trent Brown isn't available, and he rarely was this past season, Okorafor is a major upgrade at left tackle. So I get it. There were no big splashes this offseason. They didn't get Calvin Ridley. They weren't willing to spend more than $22 million a year. I wasn't willing to spend more than $20. I'm shocked the Patriots even went that high. You have to draw the line somewhere, and they drew it a lot higher than I was expecting. They didn't get Tyron Smith, which was disappointing at left tackle, or Jonah Williams, and the reasoning there is he's more of a right tackle than a left side guy. So I get it. Would have loved to see Tyron Smith then throw a little bit more guaranteed money at him, but even then he wanted to play for a contender. And also they didn't really get a number one receiver. KJ Osborne may fill that role at least temporarily as a bridge, but would have liked to see the Patriots get a number one guy, whether that was Calvin Ridley, who is really the only available number one guy on the market. But just to reiterate, the Patriots are not an attractive destination at the moment. They won 4 games. Not only does Massachusetts have a high state income tax, they have a millionaire tax. They have a high cost of living. It's cold. Nobody knows who's the quarterback's going to be. Nobody outside New England knows a damn thing about Gerard Mayo. Gerard Mayo hasn't been anywhere outside of New England as a player and a coach. So, look, they made upgrades at key positions and attracted some B+ free agents, and I think Elliott Wolf deserves more credit than he's getting for that. Now, you still have to address quarterback, wide receiver, the number one spot, and tackle. But all this has taken place before the draft, and I would expect the Patriots to address all 3 of those key positions in the first 3 rounds of the draft. I'd be shocked if they did. Maybe they go for a tight end instead of a receiver. Like, that is possible, but in all likelihood, they're taking Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or maybe even J.J. McCarthy at 3rd overall, assuming they stand pat, which it seems like they want to do. Yes, I know they're at Caleb Williams' pro day today, but I don't see, even if the Patriots were willing to move hell and earth to trade up to number 1, I don't see the Bears willing to do that. Maybe they consider trading back. As of right now, that doesn't seem to be the indication. If that's the case, if you want a top starting left tackle, you're probably going to have to take him in the 2nd round, which there is talent. There is first-round talent there at the left tackle position that will likely be available in the 2nd round. So then you're deferring receiver to the 3rd round, which is tough. You know, you may be losing out on guys like McConkey or Xavier Legette, A.D. Mitchell, who's probably going later in the 1st round. But there's a lot of really decent wide receivers that may go in the 1st round in other drafts, but because they are so deep in this draft, there's guys that will probably fall to the 3rd or 4th round. And hey, the Patriots nailed the Demario Douglas selection last season, and they got him in the 6th round. So you never know who they could acquire, even in the later rounds. And let's also not write off the fact that the Patriots still have the ability to make a move for a number 1 guy. I wouldn't be shocked at this point because it makes the draft a lot easier if they do address the receiver position and trade a 2nd or a 3rd round pick for a guy like T. Higgins, who we know is probably going to get traded, or like Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, who may or may not get traded, and then extending one of those guys. Patriots should not make the move unless they get assurance that they will extend that guy. But if the Patriots were willing to spend $22 million a year on Calvin Ridley, I don't see why they wouldn't be willing to go somewhere in the range of 25 to 30 million for T. Higgins. And T. Higgins, I'm sure, would bite at that deal, even if he is going to a less attractive spot. Patriots make that trade, get the assurance from Higgins that he'll sign an extension, then you're off and running, and you suddenly have a pretty decent receiving core. I get it, though. This is a 4-win team, a lot of the same players, some small upgrades, and holes remaining at key positions, but let's also not forget, this team has a top 10, potentially top 5 NFL defense with everyone coming back. And their de facto defensive coordinator this past season is now the head coach. And let's not forget DeMarcus Covington, who played a major role in that defense, really helped in the development of guys like Christian Barmore. He's now the defensive coordinator. So I think the defense is going to be just fine. Like, the defense will be fine. And another thing, and I know, like, a loss is a loss. It doesn't matter if you lose by 30 points or you lose by 2. A loss is a loss. But the Patriots lost 8 games last season by a touchdown or less. There were field goals that could have been made that would have won them a few more games. We really just need average, even slightly below average offensive play for them to be competitive. I know we don't have Belichick's coaching back. That's perhaps a big loss. But last season, the issue was the coaching. They didn't have a good offensive line coach. Adrian Clem was a disaster, and then he left midway through the season for health issues, and we never heard from him again. They have a real offensive line coach now. The special teams cannot possibly be any worse. They brought in a guy from the Rams, I believe, who I think is going to be a real spark for that special teams unit. I think this is a near 500 level team, maybe a 7-win team, maybe an 8-win team currently. I really believe that. Once you factor in the offense got a little bit better, you don't think they're going to make the same stupid mistakes they made last season. The special teams, even if they're middle of the pack, that's fine. And the defense is going to be roughly the same. That's a 500 level team. And they still have draft moves to make. I'm not saying the Patriots are going to win the AFC East. That's not happening. But don't write this team off and think like, oh, they're going to be in the top 3 in the NFL draft next season. That's just not going to happen. I like what Elliott Wolf has done. I don't think he deserves an A, but Pro Football Focus, was it Pro Football? I think it was, gave the Patriots a B+ so far in this offseason because they factored in, they brought back all these key guys. They're keeping the same strong defense they had last season, and they upgraded at nearly every offensive position except for maybe left tackle, which they will address in the draft. But let me know if you disagree in the comments below. Like, are we being too tough right now on Elliott Wolf? Are we worried about having to build through the draft? You think these are not upgrades? Because I think they are. And hopefully, assuming some of these guys stay healthy, I think this could be a 500 level team. And maybe Drake May or Jaden Daniels adds that spark to the offense. They can win that starting job in training camp, and then they're off and running. And suddenly, we're almost an above 500 level team. And then in year 2, suddenly we're competing in the AFC East again. Like, I think that is highly possible. And I think Elliott Wolf has done what he can in the situation he's in to really put the Patriots in a position. They also got plenty of cap space still. So in all likelihood, unless they make another big, like they make a big trade and then extend the guy and then chew up cap space that way, they're going to head into next offseason with even more room. If the Patriots build their reputation a bit more, maybe they can make some of these big free agent splashes. But you weren't getting Calvin Ridley. He didn't want to come to New England. You weren't getting Tyron Smith. He wants to go to a contender. He went to the Jets because I don't think they're going to be a contender, but they have the pieces to potentially be one. Same with Mike Williams. But let me know if you disagree in the comments below. And if you like what you see, even if you disagree, find it thought-provoking, be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. I appreciate all the engagement of late. Share it with your friends, and we'll be back with more Patriots coverage, more breaking news as it rolls in.